malware. Do you have a follow-up?
I do. Not a follow-up, but another question. Have you ever stood and taken a look at the Theodore Roosevelt statue out in front on Central Park West there? And if so, what went through your mind, and how do you feel about its removal?
Yeah, I have looked at it, Rich, and I think Roosevelt himself is another one of these complex figures in American history. He did some extraordinarily progressive things that we feel to this day, and he did some things that I think are deeply troubling. But I think there's a separate question between him, the person, and the actual statue. The statue has representations that clearly do not represent today's values. The statue clearly, presents a white man as superior to people of color. And that's just not acceptable in this day and age. And it never should have been acceptable. So I know the museum feels it's best to take it down. I support that decision. I think, they felt that's what was right for them as a museum. And I understand why they're doing it, and I respect it.
Next, we have Marcia from CBS.
Mr. Mayor, you talked at the beginning of your remarks about the increase in shootings, which was astounding over the last several days. But there's been basically an increase in shootings since January. And I wonder if you can tell us what role this increase in shootings will play in your thinking about budget cuts to the NYPD.
Yeah, Marcia, it's a very important question. So you're right, Marcia. In the beginning of the year, we saw an uptick in crime and shootings. We saw some leveling off for a few months in the beginning of the coronavirus crisis. Now we've seen something very troubling in recent weeks. To me, I am feeling this distinctly. I'm very, very concerned about how many shootings we're seeing. And I'm feeling it from the perspective of our communities. This means we know when there's shootings, they beget more shootings. We understand retaliation, we understand gang dynamics. And I've heard from a lot of community leaders that they're increasingly concerned. So as we try to make sense of all the important issues that have to be addressed in this budget, I think, Marcia, it's really important to remember, job one is always to keep people safe. And we can do that while creating reform and creating a better NYPD and a fairer NYPD and a different relationship between NYPD and community. But job one is always to keep people safe.
My follow-up question also has to do with the police. The department seems to be concerned about not canceling the police cadet class coming in, the new class, because they say that they're expecting an increase in attrition for various reasons, and that the new police class would be bringing in more police officers who would be from the community, minorities, and people who would represent the communities of New York City. And they're anxious to make sure that they increase that number of people in the NYPD, but also to make up for the loss through attrition. I wonder what your thoughts are about that.
Marcia, another very important question. I thank you for it. Look, we had to delay a class of our recruits because of the coronavirus. It's a really important question, what we want to do next and need to do next as a city. This is absolutely a part of the discussion with the city council as we prepare the budget. You're absolutely right, Marcia. The NYPD today, and I think a lot of people don't know this, today's NYPD is majority people of color. Today's NYPD is increasingly New York City residents. I think a lot of people who've hoped for a different and better kind of policing have wanted to see more representation from communities in the NYPD, have wanted to see more people actually live in the same borough or the same general part of the borough, patrolling the streets and having that sense of investment and connection to the people. That's actually been happening more and more in recent years. So you're absolutely right that any time we don't bring in a new recruit class, we're actually slowing down that progress. But we have to look at all of the factors here, Marcia. We have to figure out, again, safety first, and then how do we deal with these extraordinarily difficult fiscal dynamics that are going to affect every single agency. I want to emphasize that. If we do not get borrowing authority from Albany in the coming days, if we do not get a stimulus from Washington, which unfortunately looks like a foregone conclusion that we won't, every single city agency will experience some kind of cut here. And so it's going to affect everyone. But in the case of the NYPD, as we sort that out, as we also try and figure out the right reforms to make to address the need for more fairness and justice, We have to start from the position of what will keep people safe, and that's a complex decision. That's what we have to work out over the course of the next week or so.
Last two for today. Next, we have Sydney from the Staten Island Advance.
Hey, Mr. Mayor. So an assistant principal on Staten Island from New Dorp High School is under investigation for allegedly citing racist stereotypes about people living in public housing and on government assistance. I'm wondering if you've seen her remarks and if you think she should be removed. And I have a second question.
Sydney, I have not seen the remarks. I'm very concerned when I hear anything like that, because no one in a position of authority should use racially insensitive language, especially someone who's an educator and kids look up to. But I don't know the facts, and so I can't comment on the specifics. But go ahead with your next question.
Yeah, I wanted to know who's in charge of enforcing the rules of your open restaurants plan. Is it DOT or the sheriff's office? And is there a new tip line to report restaurants not following the rules? And can restaurants open for outdoor dining on both sides of the restaurant or only in front, or and can they open on the street? On Staten Island, we've seen corner restaurants set up outdoor dining on the front and sides of the restaurants and put up barricades on the street to block off traffic. So wondering what's allowed and who's in charge of enforcing the rules.
Sure, excellent question. So, Sydney, I'll start very broadly, and I'm going to pass to Commissioner Trottenberg and Commissioner Doris. Okay, so first of all, remember, we're in a crisis. We need to get our economy back. We need to get people's livelihood back. We are trusting people very much with this approach. We're trusting the restaurant owners to self-certify. We're trusting the people of this city to do the right thing to keep each other safe. And overwhelmingly, that trust has been rewarded time and time again in this crisis. People are doing the right thing. There'll always be some people who take advantage, and we'll deal with that. But it is, to begin with, based on the positive, not the negative. In terms of the frontage you can use, and in terms of how to address any problems, the commissioners will speak to that. Obviously, anybody who thinks they see something dangerous or unhealthy can always call 311, because we want those reports we want to act on right away. But we're starting from the perspective of we do not anticipate a lot of enforcement. We do not anticipate a lot of need to go in aggressively, because we think most people are going to do this the right way. Commissioner Trottenberg, Commissioner Doris, you want to add?
I'll jump in. You're right, Mr. Mayor. The primary source for complaints is going to be 311, and the different agencies have worked with 311, and the complaints will be routed to whichever agency it makes the most sense. If it's an issue you raise about how much space a restaurant's allowed to have on the street or the sidewalk, that would be DOT. Other types of enforcement could go to PD. But we are very much hoping, as the mayor said, to use education and really work with restaurants, the Hospitality Association, local bids, and SBS is at the forefront of that educational process.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Commissioner?
Yeah, so I'll just add, as Commissioner Trottenberg said, we are ensuring that we reach out to our restaurants and small businesses. Our hotline is the best way to get us clarity on some of these matters, but also to proactively ask questions to help you navigate the process. Again, it's 888-727-4692. And we also have webinars and training for our restaurant owners. I was out in Jackson Heights this weekend speaking with the Latino Restaurant Association, and many of those restaurants, as we talked to them, wanted this clarification and was utilizing our services, and was also extremely happy with the 5 to 10 minutes it took for them to actually sign up for this. So a lot of that was because of the education, and we will continue to do that. Our hope is that we have a complaint-driven process in which we're not going out and driving, violations and complaints and so forth from these businesses, but we want to make sure that we train them and let them know what's happening. And so we're here for you. If you're a small business out there, a restaurant, you still need help, please reach out to our hotline. We're happy to assist.
And again, the more memorable version of the hotline, 888-SBS-4NYC, 888-SBS-4NYC. Okay, go ahead.
Last question for today. We have Jen Peltz from AP.
Hi, Mr. Mayor. How are you?
Good, Jen. How you doing?
Thanks. I have a couple of questions. One is concerning the reopening. As I'm sure you know, that a lot of the big employers and offices are not yet planning to bring back their workforces, or even a small number of them. What do you think that means for the overall health of the city's business climate, since a lot of smaller businesses depend on their big office neighbors?
Yeah, Jen, it's a great question. I think what you're going to see is evolution. I've talked to a lot of business owners, big and small. And what people are saying is, even though remote offers certain advantages or continuity, it's not the same thing. It's not as good in many ways. And the fact is, right now, as we're making sure we go through each phase safely, a lot of folks still want to be remote, that's fine. But as we get toward the fall, I'm certainly going to be encouraging people to start coming back more in person. The fact is, yeah, you're right. A lot of small businesses, a lot of restaurants, so many different parts of our economy depend on people coming back to those office jobs. So I think it'll be like this. There'll be some hesitation at first. There'll be some watchful waiting. People wanting to make sure it really works. People want to make sure they're comfortable with it. The economy will start to come back.